Welcome to another edition of our post-council meeting news conference. As we do this today, it's Thursday, March 11th, and this is the recap of the council meeting that was held on Tuesday night, March 9th. And as always, from WDLB, Mike Warren will be leading the way here, so take it away, Mike.
All right, thank you, Steve. Well, let's go back to the meeting on March 9th. And Mayor, I'll start with you. I guess the sort of headline of the meeting was this ongoing issue of holding a series of hearings regarding this complaint that has been filed against you by citizen Andy Keogh. And that was back on the agenda on Tuesday night. And basically it said request to approve procedure for conducting the hearing. And then to set additional dates for the hearing if needed. Can you just kind of give us a summary of what was the discussion and what was the eventual outcome of that particular agenda item this past Tuesday?
So there were two items on the agenda. Item Q was to approve a stenographer for the hearing, and that of course passed 10-0. And then Attorney Calney was on Zoom and went over the procedure and how the hearing will go, the opening statements, exam, cross-exam, questions for everybody, and pretty much just went over a lot of housekeeping items for that. And then there was also a motion to add a third day. He had heard that there were potentially other witnesses there, and then, of course, then that takes time. So I believe what the motion was is to have, we'll start on next Friday at 6 p.m., and then the 22nd and 23rd, we would start at 5 p.m., and then the normal council meeting for that Tuesday, the 23rd, would get kicked back to, I believe, the 31st. So, and that was really it. It was a lot of housekeeping items that were on there. And again, I thought Attorney Calney did a great job. He was very clear, very concise on how it should go.
And I'll add to that, we've been very lucky, I think, to get Attorney James Calney from Davis and Kielfeld, because he's been part of this before. I may have mentioned this on the last program, but he's actually been part of these kind of proceedings 4 times in his career. One with a mayor, one with a council member, one with an elected city clerk. I forget the 4th time, but so he's walked through Chapter 17. And I think what's significant about this, Mike, is that the rules and procedures are very important. As people were watching this the other night, they probably weren't riveted to their seats. But it's very much like football games or something else. I mean, you have to understand what the playing field is. All the parties need to understand what's expected of them and what they can be expecting of others if you're going to have a fair and good process. So even though process and procedure is not very exciting, it's pretty important.
Well, and I'm looking at the rules of procedure, and it has things on here like opening statements, witnesses, compelling testimony, evidentiary matters, burden, argument, exhibits, things of this nature. Is it going to, I mean, it sounds like it's going to kind of look and feel and sound a lot like a criminal trial that, we see in courts. Is it right?
Well, it's going to look a lot like a trial. I mean, it's a hearing, and but the statutes are for this type of Chapter 17. It's very, very clear. I think it's maybe a little bit more wide open. I guess as an analogy, it'd be like watching a Senate hearing where you've got witnesses or you've got people that come up there, make their statements, and then the others, if you notice in a Senate hearing, the senators can ask questions, and it's going to be much along those, that's pretty much, but you have to have that so that, and Attorney Calney has done a good job of stating this, so that we don't get off of line going on different directions. You've got to have these rules in there and guidelines, and which will just make it more efficient and thorough.
I will say, to add to what the mayor said, Mike, I think it's going to look and feel at points like a trial, but it's it's going to be a little bit more informal than that. I mean, if you've watched criminal law type shows on TV and you see cross-examination and all this stuff, I mean, you're not going to have people crying out point of order or I object. And, on the procedural grounds of Chapter 14.35 of the federal code or something, it's going to be, I mean, right now it appears as though the mayor and Andy Keel may be representing themselves. I mean, we're not attorneys in the room. The council members aren't attorneys. The only attorney, well, the city attorney will be there, but otherwise, Calney's the only one present probably who's going to be a lawyer. So the expectations are a little bit lighter, but it will have that look and feel when you talk about opening statements and witnesses and cross-examination of being somewhat that way.
And anything else on that particular topic? No, okay.
So.
There was another, so then item S was review complaint made against a member of the Common Council. And Mayor, can you kind of summarize what that one was about and where that discussion ended up on Tuesday?
There was a complaint made about a council member on dialogue that was had during a Common Council meeting. And the person that made the complaint was actually here that night and reiterated his complaint as well. And then when it got down to when the council started to go into it and look into it, it was pretty much determined that council members do have their right of free speech. They do have their right to say their opinion, and that is protected under the First Amendment. And that's pretty much where it was left. There's really nothing procedurally to do or anything. A council member has every right to express their views and opinions.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Again, I agree totally with Bob. We want to make sure that our elected officials and our city staff who are at those meetings are behaving in ways that are appropriate, good decorum, polite and professional when they talk to members of the public and when they address each other for that matter. And that's important. We don't want that to be lost. And yet I think what was decided is that the comments that Rebecca Spiros had made, were not outwardly disparaging or they were not with ill intent. She was simply expressing her views as she's allowed to as a member of the council. So I think it was handled well. I think there may be a question in the future. You'll probably see a little bit of heightened sensitivity about how we handle complaints. We have a greater sense of awareness in our community of some of the things happening in this building because of the case with Chief Gramza and now the issue with Mayor Bob. And, people are paying attention. So we may get more people in the audience. We may get more people who are on alert about wanting to make sure that the things are done right and handled fairly. But I think in this case, the council rightly looked at the situation and said there was nothing out of order on the part of Councilmember Spiros.
Okay, there was also a presentation. Actually, there were 3 special presentations. The one was interesting, a report regarding cat overpopulation. Mayor, I don't mean to, kind of tongue in cheek, but it's a serious problem, isn't it, in this city? I guess you don't realize it until you stop and look at some of the numbers, which I think the council got a firsthand look at on Tuesday, and the seriousness, just the sheer number. When you say overpopulation, that might be an understatement, right?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers that they were going out was a very good presentation, very passionate presentation, and on how cats in some areas are just out. And what they do then is they will go and they will get the abandoned cats and bring them in to spay or neuter them, and so that they can't keep reproducing, because sometimes they'll reproduce 2 times a year, I think they said, and sometimes the litters are 6 to 8 kittens, and if they're all abandoned, you can run into a big problem right away. When some of the outlying areas, they were able to go get the cat, bring it in, see if it had any, injuries or illnesses, and then if they weren't spay or neuter them, and then after another day or 2 of them in recovery, take the cat back out to the place where they were picked up and put it out there as it's kind of a stray cat. I believe in the city we have a little bit more restriction on that, and so they're going to have to go back and see. I don't I don't believe, but this is where the information is right now, that we can take a cat that was abandoned that we brought in and fixed and then take it out and put it back on the street. I don't know that we have the authority to do that. So that's what's going to have to be looked at. But there is a serious overpopulation of cats. There's just no doubt about it. And so now that Bob Larson, who's one of our ordinance officers, terrific guy, great ordinance officer, is going to work with them on how we can really get this issue that is out of control under control.
Yeah, I agree that Bree Richardson did a really great job of presenting that. And, MAPS individuals were there too. Karen Rao and her team are just outstanding. I can't say enough for what the Marshfield Area Pet Shelter does, what they've meant to this community in terms of the issues of dealing with dogs and cats and some of the concerns that come from that. But, I think the stray cat type of thing really flies under the radar for some people. If you're not affected by it, you don't see it. You might even look at a council agenda and say, wait a minute, we're talking about a hearing with the mayor. We're talking about, complaint about a council member. Where does the stray cat population fit? Why is that an important thing? It causes a lot of public time, money to deal with it. As stated that night, it's only going to get worse if not dealt with. And it really is something that the average person probably is not aware of, but is a very important concern. So I applaud what Bree is doing, and the idea of working with the council on a possible ordinance will make it more palatable, or I guess more successful for them to do what they're trying to do with a program like trap, neuter, and release. And so we want to definitely be a help in that effort.
Okay. There was also a presentation on the 2020 Economic Development Report. I guess this is what, Mayor, the annual Economic Development Report. What did you hear from, I think it was Josh Miller, Development Services Director, who gave that report the other night?
Well, it was very exciting, actually, because certainly over the last several months, a lot of the attention has not been on the really great things going on in the city. And this report that the Economic Development Board did showed that we got through a really, really tough year with COVID. We got through it pretty well from an economic point of view. There were some businesses that did close, but there were a lot more that opened. Our population is rising just a little bit. Our unemployment rate is typical for what's taking place in central Wisconsin. And yet, even having said that, our businesses are still having difficulty getting people to fill jobs. So we've got plenty of jobs out there. Overall, and of course, it went over housing and the incentives that are there, and that we are still at a housing shortage and a lot shortage for people to build new homes. It was interesting to see that the amount of permits for last year was still up. So I believe people were putting in new homes, but they were also putting in, taking that time, while they were under quarantine to fix up the home, add to their use and enjoyment and value of the home. So I think that was good. So overall, it was a great report. Our Economic Development Board, they do a great job, and Josh does a tremendous job with them.
Yeah, it was a good report. And people probably thinking about COVID-19 would have thought the entire report was going to be a big bust. And that's not the case. I think the mayor says it well. With Josh Miller and the Economic Development Board and our partners, Main Street, Mackey, and others, working together, they've been able to do some good things. The biggest hit that you can see took place was to tourism. Room tax collections were down about 30%. And that's not surprising. There was a period of time when I think the hotels weren't even open. And when they were later on, it was, with a lot less travel. Certainly business travel was down. But, other things are good. We have to find more lots to build on because people want to build homes here in Marshfield. That's a continuing challenge. And of course, industrial commercial is always something we need to work on. We're looking at acquiring more land for industrial purposes out to the east, roughly, of the existing Yellowstone Industrial Park. And if we get that acreage online, we'll have more land to show to possible developers for industrial projects. I think all things considered, if we can get through COVID in the coming, 2, 3, 4 months, whatever it is, when we start pulling out we're going to have really emerged a lot better than most people would have thought after a year-plus pandemic.
Well, and Mayor, let's talk about that a little bit more too, because that was mentioned, I think, in the meeting at some point, coming through COVID, in terms of the city, starting to reopen some facilities, right?
Yeah, Steve gave a good update on that as we see the numbers continue to fall. And we're very, very pleased with that. If you look at, you go to the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, and they can show you the daily, how many people get a new infection and how many people are in the hospital, not only for the state, but for the different regions. And the numbers that we have here have fallen dramatically. Now, that is not the worst thing in the world to do, is to get all happy and to start going out in big gatherings. We've got it apparently under control. The other thing that's happening well is that more and more people are getting vaccinated. And so we've got some really, really good things happening there. One thing you will notice, and I was alarmed for a while, but then I got reassured, so it was good. The amount of tests that people are taking, the daily testing, is just not near what it was. I mean, there was a time when it was 12, 15, 18,000 a day, and now I think like 3,000 to 4,000. So the concern was, do we have enough testing? Is the reason that the numbers are low is because we're not testing enough. And I've been reassured by Wood County and many different places that it's not. We have plenty of tests available. People don't feel the need to, maybe they're not symptomatic or haven't been exposed to COVID or whatever, so that number is down. So we're happy about that. We're very, very happy. And so with that, we can open up, but we can open up cautiously. I mean, we have to be cognizant of it, and Steve has done a great job with his staff of making sure that employees are safe and that folks coming in are in a safe environment where they would not catch the virus in any one of our facilities. So it's going to be a well-planned and reopening, if you will, and it's going to be very strategic.
Well, in addition to the fact that the number of tests is dropping, the number of cases is dropping with that, of course, and the positivity rate is falling. If you think back not all that long, like 30% of the tests came up positive. So yes, we are seeing the testing drop, but the number of cases is falling faster than that, new cases, because that positivity rate has gotten down closer to 10% or something else, which is a good sign. It's one of the metrics they wanted to look at. I want to give kudos to Bob on two things. I know I've done one of them before, and it came up from one of the speakers the other night, who greatly thanked him for his messages on Facebook and elsewhere during some of the darker days of COVID, to reassure people and let them know that their leaders, not just in the city, but across the community, are working together to try and make this community get through it. And I applaud you on those regular messages that you were putting out to the public. And the other thing is, the effort you put, and Josh Miller was there obviously as well too, doing the details and got support from the Economic Development Board, but of getting that small business grant program. That $2,000, it may not sound like a lot, but when you had small business owners who were struggling to pay their utilities and pay their rent and whatever, Bob just took the reins and said, look, we need to get this done sooner rather than later. And then people partnered together to make it happen. And that was greatly appreciated. I think Josh Miller said at the end of the night again, some of the feedback they got from those businesses was just thank you, and thank you for allowing us to get through that tough time and stay around. So, I think the community as a whole banded together, Mike. We saw it from the meetings that we've had over the 12 months with other community leaders, whether it's the school district or the tech college, the university, United Way. I'm going to forget a lot of players, but people coming together to get this community through a tough time.
Well, yeah, and it comes on the heels of, a school board meeting the other night that said, they basically announced we're going to everyday classes on April 5th after spring break. So they're going back to everyday classes. So what is the reopening plan for city facilities? Is there a date in mind?
I can take that. Yeah, what I was announcing the other night during the staff updates is that as of Monday, the 15th of March, both the library and City Hall will be reopening to the public. They've both been closed for a few months. Somebody asked me the other day what the actual closing date for those facilities was, and I really don't remember anymore. I know the council gave me authorization to do that back in the fall. I think it was sometime in October, when the number of cases was ramping up. We had staff that we were trying to protect during the election season because we couldn't afford to have them quarantined. And as we got into December, quite honestly, we were short-staffed here a lot because of a number of employees being quarantined from exposure to COVID-19. But so those facilities will be back to open with precautions. Both the library and City Hall will be expecting you to wear masks and socially distance and those types of things, but will be accessible again to the citizens. The other facilities, Mike, are really largely, it have been open for the most part all along with restrictions. In other words, if you go to the fire department, you're not going to have tours, and those types of things. Some of the ancillary services are not available yet. But most city facilities are now pretty much open. I talked to Chris Hawley from the street department, and he said that, they're still pretty well shut down except for deliveries they get from vendors and those kind of things. But then the street department, quite frankly, doesn't get a lot of visitors the way some of other facilities do. So I think in terms of the services that the public is looking to access the most, we're pretty available now, or will be when we hit the 15th.
Okay. Yeah, and the council meeting came at the end of a 60-plus degree day, kind of fitting because there was also an update on Vanda waters. I think, Mayor, wasn't there? What did you hear there? Was there anything that sort of jumped out in that update that Justin Casperson, the Parks and Recreation Director, had on Tuesday night on that project?
No, the thing that jumped out is that right now everything is on schedule and looking good to open when they wanted to open. He does an update every month, and it's been very fun to see the different pictures of when they first started. It was just dirt and trees that they had to take care of, and now you've got a structure there. You've got the pool vessels there, and it's really coming along well. I think it's going to be a great thing for the city when it actually does open up. It'll be a nice benefit, and it appears that the decision that the council made to start sooner certainly saved us some money. And now what the citizens have to look forward to is, barring anything that would take place between now and then, a beautiful pool to open up and so that they can enjoy that in the summer, which I think will be tremendous.
I just want to add on to what Bob said about the decision to not open Halfco Pool last year and get going sooner on Vanda waters. This shows what happens when you have vision by elected officials and patience by the public. And they're both important. I think what the mayor and the council did by saying, hey, look, let's not open. Let's give you the go-ahead to get this project going and get up and running for the summer of 2021 was awesome. But I don't want to discount the fact that the citizens seem to accept it. I mean, people wanted to get out last year badly. I mean, there's so few things you could do during those days of COVID-19. And yet I heard very few complaints from people about the decision not to open Halfco for last summer. They grabbed on to the vision that if we can get through this and come out and have the facility up and running for the summer of 2021, let's do it. And they're going to be rewarded this summer.
Yeah, and is there a target date on that? Is it July 1? Or what
that,
is
I believe, is the target.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, ideally we'd like to be
Give or take.
open. We'd like to be able to have opened a little bit earlier, maybe a couple weeks earlier in June, but that is the target that I've heard as well, the very beginning of July.
Okay. Also, was there a new lease agreement announced on Tuesday?
Yeah, Tom Laux, our communications director, has been talking with me for a while, Mike, about some space issues. They need not only space for the studio and an office, but they also have some storage needs. Because over the years, you accumulate a lot of materials as far as, programs and storage of equipment and things you need to keep or whatever. So been trying to work out for more storage in the old City Hall. He's been over in the old City Hall for, since we sold the building, basically, or not quite that long, I guess. But on the first floor, there's a studio in the former first floor conference room and a little office right off near the elevator on the first floor. Well, they've kind of outgrown that a little bit, and they talked about some storage needs issues. And finally, they came upon the fact that, those 3 floors, 5, 6, and 7, really are not being used yet. The new owners, Dave and Christy Steinley, who are wonderful people, are looking to someday, do some remodeling and get people to have offices up there or whatever businesses they tried to locate. But the fifth floor, the former clerk's office that Deb Hall and her department was in, appeared to work really well for what Tom would need. They need a little bit more storage, and this will put them all together, the office, the studio, and the storage area all in one place. And it'll cost a little bit more, but this will help us get through the next 3 years until the spring of 2024. And during that time, I'm sure that you'll hear discussion in this room with the mayor and council about the longer-term future. There's been talk about, do they look at building out a space in the Second Street Community Center? Might be a great location. Are there other ideas? But for right now, pay a little bit more rent, get a little bit more storage. It works. And again, this comes from franchise fees and not from tax dollars. So we think it's a win-win, and it'll provide 3 years of certainty of more efficiency until we can maybe look at longer term.
Okay, was there anything else? That was pretty much the meeting in a nutshell, correct?
I think so. I just want to remind people what was said earlier. Because of the third hearing date with the mayor, the second council meeting in March will be moved back a week from the 23rd to the 30th. So Tuesday, we kind of get a break because there's 5 Tuesdays in March. So if people could pick up on the fact that the second meeting in March will actually be Tuesday the 30th at 6 p.m. I don't think I have anything beyond that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you both for being here.
All right. And thanks to all of you for watching the post-council meeting news conference for the meeting of Tuesday, March 9th. Have a great day.